Okay, welcome back. Episode number 103, Mastering Modern Selling. Tom Burton here with Brandon Lee from Orlando, live from Orlando today, if I'm not mistaken.
Live from Orlando today.
And Carson is out traveling somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, but he's not here. But we have yet another amazing guest. Richard Vickers, welcome.
Tom and Brandon, thank you guys. And Carson, I think, is in Arizona. And I think he specifically missed today because I was going to be on here. So
I think, he said that. He's like, I didn't really have anywhere to go, but I'll just go to Arizona because Richard's going to be on today. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, thanks for allowing me to
No.
jump in and be a part of the conversation, fellas.
That's going to be his loss, Carson's loss. So,
That's right. Richard, I'm so excited for it. I mean, you and I did our pre-show call. Gosh, it feels like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But I was so excited after that call. I mean, it was wonderful to meet you and get to know you. And we're going to have some fun today. We're going to have good conversations.
So I think Bob, welcome, Bob. Good to see you. He thinks you're a radio voice. Excellent.
Yeah, I get that all the time. My mom, at one time when I was 12 years old, I think I was upstairs doing my radio and television voice, and she told me what I thought was a compliment. She said, "I'll be so glad when you grow up someday and you're on radio or television." I said, "Mom, thank you so much." And then she said, "Well, at least then I can turn you off." And then I realized, that was not a compliment.
It was half and half, I think.
Yeah. Always count on moms to give those like backhanded
zingers.
Yeah. Well, hey, Bob said you had a radio voice. Bob has often said that I have a face for radio. So it's a much better compliment you got.
I'm not so sure.
So we're going to dig in today, Richard, and talk about your background of sales training, personal brand training, working with salespeople. I think there's some real tangible things that people are going to be able to take away today, which we really like. Kind of just start us off a little bit about your background, what you do currently, and then we'll jump in here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that Bob mentioned communications is my background. I early in my college career, communications and theater, and the next thing you know, I found out that I might be able to talk and do some selling. So I've been carrying the bag, as they say, on the street for years. And here recently, in the latter part of my career, got into sales training, learning and development, and now really in charge of career development, career growth at US Foods and onboarding all of our new folks. So that's a little bit of my background. I've been with US Foods for almost 18 years. So how's that for a 30-second introduction to my background?
Wow. So you currently at US Foods, as you hire new salespeople, you're helping them kind of get indoctrinated and training them on, and is it all parts of sales, inside, outside, or?
Yeah, it's inside and outside sales. I just left our sales training team to come over to the learning and development side. All of it goes through our learning and development. But yeah, I was a part of the sales training team where we onboarded new sellers every 3-4 weeks. We'd bring on a new group of new sellers and teach them the US Foods culture, the US Foods way, and selling, and all of those kind of things. I find it interesting, Brandon, you probably appreciate this. I did a little research several years ago and this is according to Amazon, right? There's about 100,000 books, probably over that now, 120,000 books that you can buy currently in print about sales. So if you bought all of them, I figure up, $20 a book, somewhere around $1 million you would spend on all of these books. But that would be a bargain for all of us on this call, because companies and corporations across the world spend about $2.5 billion a year on sales training. So you could buy all the sales books for about $1 million, or 2.5 billion, all of the corporations, we're talking Granger, we're talking John Deere, Harley Davidson, cars, pharmaceuticals, food sales, 2.5 billion a year on sales training. that's a chunk of change.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
that's a huge market.
And I find, I mean, this isn't totally on our agenda, but it just made me think that I find it's kind of like sales training and personal development. It's like we read, but we fail to implement. Like, I mean, I've been telling my kids who are in college, it's like, I've got my 3 key books that I read and I keep reading them over and over again. And I just realized after all the years of having so much pride in how many books I read per month,
Yeah.
realizing I was completely full of crap because I retained nothing. I was just reading pages. And now I have like 3 books that I just kind of keep rereading over and over again
Yeah.
and trying to go deep instead of wide. And I think in a lot of cases in sales, it could, find one person that you like and follow and kind of take their stuff and follow it, become more disciplined.
Yeah, John Maxwell is that person for me. I have his entire library. I love all of his leadership and communication stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I've figured out that, and maybe this is an arguable point, and maybe somebody would disagree with me, but professional growth and professional development, most people use those words and those phrases interchangeably. But what you said is exactly true. Development refers to training or going to seminars or reading some books and get some certification. All of that's great. Growth is when you push through that or apply those learned results and actually put it into practice, and you start practicing it each day and you start getting results and maybe some promotions and job changes like Carson talks about. So development refers to those actions that create growth. Maybe that's my working definition today. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
you sound like our friend John Maxwell right there.
I maybe I picked that up from him. I'm not really, maybe I should credit him just in case.
I don't think he'll mind as long as you picked it up.
All right. Well, hey, Brandon, do we want to let's welcome to everybody who's listening live and Butch
Yeah.
in Atlanta, and of course Bob, who's always here, and others. Jump in. Please ask good. I think this is a show to be asking questions, because I think what we were talking about prior to going live here, I already have like a page and a half of questions just from our conversation. So I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunity for questions here today.
Yeah, and we forget sometimes. We get so excited with our guests. Like, look, hey, we started the show and we're 103 episodes into it because we wanted to bring these guests and these conversations to our audience. So if you're on the podcast, throw things in the comments down under the show notes, or come join us on our LinkedIn or our YouTube page. But if you're here live with us, or throw it in the comments, and we do our best to bring them up on screen and help let you join the conversation. You guys are better at it than we are anyway.
Yeah. And lastly, before Richard, we go in here, I want to thank Brandon Fist Bump for again sponsoring us this week. Fist Bump is paying for all the producers and the production and everything like that. It's very appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah, one of
Brandon,
these days, we're actually going to have a Fist Bump commercial on here so people know really what we do.
Well, that's one step at a time. One step at a
time. In the next 100 episodes.
That's right. That's right. All right, Richard. So with all the training and onboarding that you're doing, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned? And what do you see are some of the biggest challenges that, as people come on and new salespeople come on, that you feel like you have to overcome to get them to be effective and really? I mean, it's hard, right? Sales has always been hard. I think it's harder than ever, which is why we do this show. Is how do you use some of the modern selling techniques to maybe rise above the noise that's out there?
Yeah, I've got a small philosophy that I kind of live and breathe by, and I'll say it and then I'll explain it. I have found over the years, no matter what you do in sales or in life, that money flows to where needs are being met. Period. I'm going to say it again. Money flows to where needs are being met. It's like if I have a need to go on vacation, I'm going to contact my vacation planner, and she's going to help me pick out some spots, and we're going to choose. So my money is going to flow there because I have a need to go on vacation. Back in the day, I remember churches would never do a bathroom remodel or a Sunday school remodel. They would do a brand new building program. And oh, by the way, the bathroom would get remodeled in that building program, because people aren't going to give their money to something that is so small and isn't meeting a need. They want to give their money to something that is going to be big and effective and they can see it. So I think for most sellers, I ask this question: are you meeting needs? Because if you're meeting a need, people have a tendency to open up their wallets and will spend money where needs are being met. And I hope that philosophy makes sense. And I hope it hits home with somebody, because a lot of times our new sellers will get so mixed up in the systems and the process and all of the things. When you leave a client or a new prospect, ask yourself the question: have I provided any value, and am I meeting any needs?
Interesting. So I have a question for you related to that in your current job. And I apologize if I don't. So US food, right? Your customer is what? Commercial
Yeah,
food, restaurants, things like that. I assume like Cisco and those types are your competitors, or the.
correct.
So what would be how would you take, if I was being onboarded, how do you help somebody that's, kind of in like a commodity type of situation there, really position that value and show that, hey, why would you buy from me versus a competitor?
Yeah, and it goes back to really understanding your product, understanding all of the things that uh, whatever company A has or company B has, but diving into where that need is for the customer. And for most food customers or restaurateurs or hospitals or whatever that may be, most of the time it is finding out where they have a void or that white space, or where their focus is so much on their product. I tell chefs all the time, you can create a $25 salad, but unless your customer, Mr. and Mrs. Chef, wants to spend $25 on that salad, you may be just wasting a bunch of ingredients and a bunch of lettuce, when you have to understand, what do your customers want? And that's a big part uh, of that sales process, is understanding what your customer, but understanding what their end customer is interested in spending their money on.
I think that's a huge point for B2B in
Mhm.
general, right? Because generally in B2B, right, you have business to consumer or to another business that are there.
Tom, you're tap your. There you go.
How about now?
No, you're
Yes.
good. It always just needs a little bit of your loving touch, and then it's right
Well,
back
no,
on.
I get excited and my arms start flying around and then it knocks the thing
I
off.
had an 8-track player back when I was in grade school. I had to do that too.
I love it. Get back to what you were saying, Tom. That was important.
No, I was just so it's, there's a layer, right? As a salesperson, knowing not only what your customer does, but what they do, right? And how they actually create value, to your point there. That gives you a very interesting edge, I think, over
Yeah,
just knowing what your products are.
yeah, and I encourage creativity. My daughter is going through nursing school, and last night she had me sit down, and I made her walk in as if I was a patient, and she's taking my blood pressure, and she's tapping and listening to my lungs, and she's doing all the things that a brand new nursing student does, right? And I stopped her. She's 22. I said, "Why do you think I had you do that?" And she said, "Well, to hear myself out loud say those things, because I'm going to be saying them to real patients and to get comfortable with it." I said, "Ding, ding, ding, ding. What do we have for her, Johnny?" That's the first reason. I said, and number two is, once you get comfortable hearing your voice say those things as me as your patient, you will be able to do that with a real patient. And a lot of our new sellers and even veteran sellers forget to have those mock conversations and talk through strategies, because it sounds, whether you're a nurse or whether you're a seller or whether I'm working on your computer, understand, and I think this is a lost art, because I'll do trainings all over the country and I'll tell people, hey, we're going to have a mock conversation. They're like, oh, that sounds fun. And I said, it's basically role play. And they go, oh, because mock conversations are role play, right? And we have this in our mind that role plays do not have any benefit. But I told, just like I told my nursing student daughter, getting comfortable and confident, where does that confidence come from? It comes from, hey, I did this with my dad last night and I understand he was being goofy with me, but all of a sudden it flows out of her mouth and she understands, she hears the words coming out of her mouth and it becomes a rote and it becomes practice. And then it's I was a safe place to fail with my daughter. So this week when she does this in front of 30 other students and her 5 professors, she's going to be a lot more comfortable because she practiced in a safe space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I had my call center, the mock, the role play was part of it, and I believe they had to do at least 12 role plays with different people, and and from different, some of the more experienced sellers had to participate and pretend to be the buyer and give them real life situations. And there's nothing like consistency in a role play that gives you confidence in real life. Totally agree with that. Hey, Tom, I want to go back a little bit because I think this is a great conversation. Bob said a little while ago, I think we make sales harder than we need to. We get in our way too often and we use tech as a crutch. Uh, Richard, what are your thoughts around that?
well, I have this 3-step philosophy that, and I people are going to think you set me up for this, but it I I have this philosophy about how to sell anything to anyone, and I mean anything, literally to anyone, because we get so, like, if I'm selling water in this water bottle with a little bit of flavoring, I know everything about the ingredients of this plastic. I know about the water bottle, and I get so consumed with the features and benefits of this product that I get so excited, like John Candy, right? And I squish it and I love it, and I lose the sale. Um, do either of you gentlemen know anything about boats?
A little bit.
Okay, awesome. What about you, Brandon? Anything about boats?
I've owned one
Yeah,
once.
yeah. I know nothing about boats, so I absolutely nothing. Uh, I've ridden in one, and I've been a passenger, and I think I've driven one a couple of times. Do you call it driving a boat? I think you should call it driving a boat.
It
Um,
depends on the boat, I guess. But
yeah, so I know nothing about boats, but I could it, and I do this practice with new sellers and veteran sellers, because this gets them out of their head. I'll say, Brandon wants to buy a boat, sell him a boat. And then person's like, how am I going to sell it? I don't know anything. Hey, Brandon, if you were going to be buying a boat, what's your favorite color? What would you want your boat?
Green.
Green. You want a green boat? That's awesome. And so I write down green boat. Hey, what are you going to do with this boat, Brandon? Are you going to ski? Are you going to go fishing? What is it?
Probably take the kids around the lake and
Oh,
let
take
them
the kids to that. So
let them
it's going to be
surf.
for, yeah, so some fun. You got a green boat that you want to use for fun with the kids around the lake. Anything else? Do you any kind of horsepower or motor?
Not sure. Outboard motor for me generally.
Okay, outboard motor. So right now, I know 3 things to sell you on a boat that I know nothing about. How in the world can I think I could get you at least somewhere down the path of buying a boat, and all I have done is just ask you some questions.
Yeah.
If I knew about boating and I knew all the things about outboard motors, I might get so excited, and when you start talking about boats, that I start selling you something or the best feature or the best something that I think. But because I know nothing about boats, I am forced to what? I'm forced to ask you questions, and
Right.
you in turn sell yourself.
Yeah. And I think just simple things like BANT. I learned that early in my career, and then somewhere in my career, I thought I was too good for it until I realized that it's such a foundational tool to use to ask the right questions and learn about the buyer and about their need and about their timing and about who's on the other side of the table and a lot of the information I need to know.
Yeah, and at at the end of the day, we're all human beings, not human doings, so I think it's connecting to, uh, our human desire, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but also our human desire is to, uh, avoid pain and somewhat seek pleasure, whether that's food or our entertainment or whatever the case may be. We naturally want to avoid pain and seek some sort of pleasure. So I will trade something of value like money or currency for something I don't have, which in this case, we're talking about product, a boat or a food product or whatever the case may be. So we've got to take some time to understand the customer's pain points, right?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah, I
good.
think I think your point about I this is prevalent in the tech world, right? Where we all understand our technology and we get so excited about our technology and what it does and features and all that. And the customer on the other side doesn't even know anything about at all what the technology is that we're bringing to the table. And we overwhelm them fairly quickly. And it doesn't really become a conversation. It just becomes a brain dump of information to the other side. So I think again, going back to your sales training, I would think that you'd almost want to start people way over on that simple part and not try and make them experts on how to make a 5-star Caesar salad or something that they're going to go in and try and sell.
And and most people think, and I'm a communicator. I love, as you can tell, I love to talk. I love to communicate. Most people think that the art of selling is communication, and I think that is a big part of it. But the oxymoron of the day is that great communicators typically are the best listeners. And once you learn that oxymoron, that it's not about what's coming out as much as it is how much you're able to ask those questions to sell you that boat, and just listen to those needs, because and one of my favorite phrases is, "So if I heard you correctly," and trust me when I say this, try to implement this in my home life with my daughters and my wife. Uh, so this is advice that you can use at home or at work and in the corporate world or selling. If I heard you correctly, and then reframing what I heard and not doing in a in a placating way, but truly listening and playing it back. Because once somebody feels heard, there's something that happens inside of us as human beings. I become much more open to hearing you if I think you've heard me.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite sayings, and especially on the show, is people don't care what you know unless they know that you care.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talk a lot about, and I believe that feelings are so important, and they tend to get, I feel like they get pushed aside a lot of times into more serious conversations, more serious points to make. But if we're not aware of how people on the other side of us are feeling, we're going to lose out. I mean, you know, Tom, what I love is that in the last probably 8 to 10 episodes that we've had like Carl Lebo on here, and he was talking about just be curious, simplified it all. If you can just be curious and imagine the person on the other side of you is in their 8-year-old self, and you're in your 8-year-old self, and you're just having a conversation. Like so many things would get better. You know, I feel like we just keep getting simplified. Like we came out of the teens and coming into the 2000s, we had all this hype around venture capital and private equity and tech and startups and entrepreneurship, and everybody was fighting to become the next freaking unicorn. And now we're
Oh,
just really coming back to, hey, you know what? It's all about people. It's all about conversations. I mean, I love what you said, Richard. The best communicators are the ones that listen most. I mean, I think that's why God gave me big ears to keep reminding me to listen more and talk less. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and just getting back to the simple.
well, and I read this, and I wish I could credit it someplace. Uh, uh, Warren Buffett was at a conference of 26 to 36-year-olds, and arguably, and I'm sure there's others, he's one of the richest investors and definitely wisest investors, businessmen of at least my generation. And he was asked to speak to this group of 26 to 36, 40-year-olds. And what was interesting is they have the Q&A at the end, and they said, Mr. Buffett, one piece of advice for this generation. What kind of advice would you give? And man, the place supposedly got super quiet because most people are thinking he's about to drop some, you know, a
Stock
stock
tip.
tip. Yeah. He's going to drop some kind of financial investing wisdom from the man himself. And as only he could do, he said, I just would love it if all of you in this room would learn to connect human to human and learn to become a world-class communicator.
Mm.
You could have heard a pin drop, just a hush over the room. So think about that. Learn to connect human to like what we're doing, connecting human to human. I barely know the two of you, and already I feel a sense of trust and a sense of admiration and connection. But learning that is a lost art, and communicating is a lost art.
You know, that reminds me of this. Do you guys know who Henry Kravis is? Colbert Kravis and Roberts,
Oh,
leverage buyout firm out of New York City. They did the whole RJR Nabisco thing back in, I think, the 80s or whatever it was. But anyways, Henry Kravis was alumni of my tiny little college that I went to in California, and he spoke, and same concept. Every, you know, in the Q&A, and somebody said, "What's your biggest piece of advice for us as undergrads?" And he thought for a minute, and he said, "You know, we hire the best MBAs from the best MBA programs in the country, and we send them all over the world representing us." And he goes, "But here's the one thing that they're really, really poor at: they don't know how to connect with other people."
mm,
It's like, so if you guys could, you've got to figure out how to communicate and how to connect with other people. And that was 30 plus years ago. And I remember sitting in the audience going, and I mean, I changed. I mean, it was a liberal arts school. So instead of a business program, I was on an economics program. But I shifted to psychology and communication because of that statement. I also hated economics. Like that was just my good push over. But I think that's what you're saying as well, and that's what with your example, like it's just such a lost art right now. Man, it
Well,
makes us sound old.
and let's use that to springboard then into Richard, some of the things we were chatting about earlier before we
Yeah.
went live is personality types, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because in order to have that quality of communication, Brandon, that you're talking about, you got to know a little bit about who you are and who you're communicating to. So,
Yeah.
kind of take us through how you use the personality types, the disc profiles, all of that, and
Yeah.
excuse me, how that sets a foundation for everything.
Yeah. I've been teaching a form of this for 20 years. There's a lot of different personality tests, personality profiles that are out there. Colors, the red, yellow, blue. What's your color of your personality? Myers-Briggs. Most corporations, probably 10, 20 years ago, used Myers-Briggs, but a form of personality test has been around since Hippocrates, since we're talking about nursing and doctors earlier. Hippocrates, the oldest doctor, divided our personalities into 4 distinct personality types. And most of us sell or operate in our communication style or our personality type. So the DISC personality type, just to give your audience a little preview, the DISC personality, DISC, it stands for dominant, influencer. The S stands for steady or steadiness, and what I'm is C. The C stands for conscientious. And think about the dominant personality type. If they had a theme song, the dominant personality would sing Elvis's "A Little Less Conversation, a Little More Action." Right? That's the dominant person. They just bulldoze through things. They're direct. They're results oriented. The I is that outgoing. If they had a theme song, it'd be "Celebrate Good Times." Come on, it's that outgoing personality. Look at me talking with my hands. Guess which personality I am? That I personality, right? And the S is that steady. They like things at that steady state, that even tempered, or they have a tendency to be patient. And the conscientious is that analytical, detailed. That's the DISC, DISC, dominant, influencer, steady, and conscientious. So I told Tom before we started recording, the best way to describe personalities for me is if 4 distinct personalities were in a car on a road trip, and uh, and you're not going to have 4. We're all a mixture of all of those personalities. It's just how we are as human beings. But if 4 distinct of those personalities, the D, the I, the S, and the C, were in a car and on a road trip and they had a flat tire, the D, of course, the dominant personality, is driving the car. He's the one, hey, everybody, just get in. I'm taking us there. And he gets out and says, hey, we've had a flat tire. This is what we need to do. And so the S, that steady personality, they don't like chaos. So the S are even tempered. They're accommodating. So they say, hey, I've got AAA on my phone. Do you want me to call them? Or can I put out the road flares? What do you need me to do? And the C gets out their Excel spreadsheet and says, now, wait a minute. We're going to miss 2 bathroom breaks on this trip now. That conscientious personality is like, okay, we're going to have to drive 80 miles an hour instead of 75 miles an hour to make it to our lunch appointment that I made last week for this trip. And they're precise. They've got system. The C, that conscientious, man. And of course, the I grabs their iPhone and they're like, hey, everybody get in the picture. Come on. This is awesome. I'm live streaming this right now. This is just an amazing thing. So that's the 4 distinct in a very short 2-minute story of the personality types. And all of us have a tendency to sell in our type. It took me a long time because I was an I personality, that
Mhm.
influencer personality. And so I thought everybody wanted me to come in and sell just bombastically until I ran into a customer that was a C personality, that conscientious. They were analytical and they wanted all the details. Now, if I was selling to an I, it was great because I could come in and just, as they say, smoke and mirrors. But a C personality wanted me to say, hey, how's this going to end up on my bottom line? How's this going to profit my business? How is this going to work into my new menu? What kind of profit margins am I going to make on this? Now, the D personality, if I tried to get way too off in the weeds, that dominant personality, they want to know, give me the facts, what's in it for me? I want to know what's the results. Now, I'm either going to make the decision real quick or get out of here. And the S personality wants you to get to know them. That steady personality, they're more even-tempered, and man, I notice how I changed my voice. Even talking about the S person, I even lower my voice and I slow my pace for an S personality because my I personality, that outgoing enthusiasm, man, the S start physically, they even in a room start backing up. So imagine sellers out there trying to sell in their own personality because that's what we're comfortable with. We're comfortable selling our communication style. If I had to break it down into anything, your personality, it's one thing to learn what you are and how you operate. It's a whole nother world to start picking up small clues of maybe what your customer's personality type and how they like to be communicated with. Wow. I did all of that in 5 minutes. I can't
That
believe it.
was impressive. No, that was very impressive. You know, as I was listening to that, though, I think about a salesperson who's not aware of that,
Oh,
right? Salespeople tend to gravitate and they tend to have meetings and do meetings and sell to people that are similar to them, right? So if you like to go to lunch and I like to go to lunch and have a
yeah.
good time, I'll tend to call you versus maybe 10 other people that are on my list that I really should call and go visit or they're there, right? So you tend to gravitate to those people that are similar to your style.
100%. And I try to have like one of my best friends in the world, he is a C personality. And the reason why I gravitate towards him is that I have learned that if I just surround myself with a bunch of I's, then we party and laugh and have a good time and we're enthusiastic, we're high spirited, but we miss all the details. So as you mature in your growth, not only as a human being, but as a seller or in your workspace, you start seeing the giftings and the strengths and the communication style of other people, and you start realizing they can help me.
Yeah. No, in fact, that opens the door up to the more higher quality, I think, communication that we're talking about before. And, you know, you hear this a lot, right? I mean, US Food ultimately is a distributor, right? And
Correct.
I have a software company. We sell entirely to wholesale distributors. So a lot of what in that world, the wholesale distribution world, it's all about increasing the wallet share, right? How do I get more from that customer? How do I find the white space, if you will, where there's opportunity? And a lot of sellers tend to shy away, if you will, from really what could be very, very large white space opportunities or wallet share opportunities just because they don't feel comfortable on who they're talking to. But if you just do that quick evaluation that you're talking about there, it kind of, oh, okay, I can go do this, right? This is, they don't have to be your best friend, but you can have a high quality business relationship with them.
Yeah, and Brandon, you mentioned this a while ago, the C-suite. I'll never forget, there was a president of a company that I was trying to make inroads with and just really trying to develop a relationship. And man, here I am, I influencer personality. And I remember, man, knocking on his door. Hey, did you see the game this weekend, Charlie? It was amazing. I was like, oh my God. And next week I come by and hey, man, what'd you guys do this weekend? It was a great weekend to get out and do some gardening. I thought, my God, this guy hates my guts. I am never going to get anywhere with this president until one time his door happened to be open and I said, hey, Charlie, when you get 5 minutes, I'd love for you to give me a call. I've got this new program that I want to roll out and chat with you about. I really think it's going to be some great things for your bottom line. Hey, come in, have a seat. oh my God, I think I got a little tear rolling down my cheek. I was like, oh my God, he likes me. Had nothing to do with the fact that he liked me. I started speaking, he was a D, that dominant personality. I started speaking his language, which was be brief, be bold, and be gone. That's a dominant personality's language.
Mm.
And it clicked with me that it wasn't about somebody liking me or not liking me. It was about speaking their language.
The ability to resonate through the communication, right? It's not what, yeah, I get whether they like you or even like your product or anything like that. It's the ability to resonate with that communication.
Yeah, 100%. And speak their language.
Yeah.
So many times, whether you're a bilingual person or you go to another country and you're going to Spain and you want to learn the Spanish language and be able to, they appreciate you. Let me give you an example. My brother's deaf. He was 3 years old, eardrums, measles. It was a long story. And he and I were not very close growing up. He was 10 years older than me. And he went to Missouri School for the Deaf and learned sign language, ASL. And I thought it was fascinating. And I started learning ASL and understanding how to communicate with my brother. That tore down a wall that was between us. And it wasn't just him not being able to hear me. It tore down a wall of my brother is speaking my language. And I'll never forget when I asked him to be my best man, and I ended up having the opportunity to be his best man in his wedding. He told me how important it was for him when I understood ASL and was able to communicate in his language. Our family dynamic changed.
Mm.
Imagine a customer, and I tell you that's the reason why I tell you that story is imagine a customer feeling trust and feeling heard and seen, Brandon, like you were talking about, whenever we're able to communicate in their language and not just shuck some product of a plastic bottle that has some flavoring.
So
We could end right there if we wanted to. That was so good.
yeah, and Brandon, I want to shift to personal brand while we have some
Yeah.
time left here. But Richard, tell me, you use a different wording, but I'm going to say the same thing. Tell me if this is what I've been hearing for the last 45 minutes, right? Is
Bluster.
right. No, really, and I think this would be the core of probably how you onboard a new salesperson, right? Understand who you are, understand who you're talking to, learn how to communicate between those different combinations between you and the others that are there. And going back to your simplicity, thing of before about keeping it with a boat and all that stuff, just keep it simple and listen, right? And if you train, I would think that you could take really anybody who doesn't had no sales experience or whatever and make them reasonably effective with just those things. Am I hearing you right on those things there?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for
I'm a C, by the way.
I appreciate my C's.
Right.
Tom, you're probably writing down notes and figuring out where in the world is this I personality going, and you probably have all the details laid out for me. You're exactly right, because like Brandon was kind of alluding to before, so many times we overcomplicate things and we make the complex even more complex. And in my mind, and maybe it's because I'm just never the smartest person in the room. I never have been, and I never want to be. But I try to make the complex so simple because I have to understand it. I have to be able to connect human to human. And again, part of that is because of my I personality, that influencer personality. Uh, so I have to have details in my life. They've become my friends because I know I'm a mess without details. And so I've learned that that's a weakness, and I've got to shore up that weakness in order to operate in my giftedness, which is what I've done for the last 45 minutes. And so I think you're exactly right, Tom, is taking all those tools and utilizing those to connect human to human. And once you do that and you're very sincere and genuine about it, I think that's where the gold is, and that's where the relationships thrive. That's if you are selling something, I think that's when I get my wallet out and I open it up because I start to see value in what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I think you also build trust, right, at the same
Oh,
time along the way. So we wanted to talk about personal brand. I want to make sure we have time for that. But and Brandon, this is something, right, that we run into as we talk to people about personal brand all the time. I would
Hmm.
think it's the I to your personality. It's very easy for an I to go out and build personal brand and get on LinkedIn and post and be
oh,
out there and all that stuff. That is harder, I believe. Maybe it's easy for the D or and the I, but the S and the C, it's maybe not so easy for them to get excited about that. Let's put it that way. That's there. How
my
do you,
work is done here. My gosh, Tom, you just broke that down so incredible.
um, and I'm asking both of you because I think Brandon, I don't want to put
Yeah.
words in your mouth, but I would think you're more I oriented,
Hmm.
right? For sure.
Yep.
And it's so easy for you to just be there and out there and, all the stuff, even what you do with your team and all that stuff. And I watch that and I go, I struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
How do you incorporate personal brand into all of these different personality types and make it effective? And what are some of the, and maybe this is a whole other episode in and of
It
itself.
is.
Hmm.
I'm,
That's a great question.
but it's something we run
I
into all
love
the
this question because I get it from my S's and my C's, right? Because S's and C's have a tendency, well, the D, the dominant, and the conscientious, what you are, Tom, the D's and C personalities, the dominant and conscientious, they have a tendency to be process driven, not so much people driven. And the I and the S, they're people driven long before they're process driven. And so my S's and my C's at the bottom are and I'm thinking about the circle of the
Hmm.
DIS and see how it operates. But uh, the the conscientious and the S personalities have, uh, they can be extroverted, but that's difficult for them. Most of the time, they are within because they love getting things done, and how can I help you get things done, and how can I do things safely? A C is like, I want to make sure everybody's safe. The S wants to bring the chaos down. So that is a step outside of their comfort zone. This is a whole different teaching, but I will break it down into 2 minutes. I always tell my S's and my C personalities, if that's their dominant, do not ever try to be an I or a D because it'll be fake. And once an S is like, oh, I love the I's, I want to be an I, all of a sudden they become inauthentic and they are no longer themselves. So for posting or getting out on social media, I tell my C's to make a list and a time frame of when you are going to post or how you're going to post and what that content is. Because why, Tom? Because you're comfortable with that list. And you're so as a result of the list, you do the social by checking off the box. Oh, it's on my list. I'm going to check off my box. For my S's, that steady personality, I really try to help them understand this is a chance for others to get to know you. And man, that feeds into that steady personality, that S, because they love it when others they're very cautious about it, but they love it when others get to know them. So you have to feed into whatever that strength. Now, a D, they're like, okay, oops, I posted something and reposted something I probably shouldn't have. Man, I'm so sorry. And they're just out there doing it and bulldozing it. Now, it has a tendency to be a lot simpler for them.
What's interesting for me, and I hadn't thought about this before, but when you were talking there, Richard, I think we've done a very big disservice by calling this whole thing social media.
Oh,
because, and like Tom, you'll say, "Oh, I tend to be more introverted." Okay, what does that have to do with anything? Just because we call it social media? Tom, you're a deep thinker and you write really amazing things. You come up
yeah.
with frameworks. Like, you've done it twice. You've distilled what Richard said into a very simple framework like this very naturally. That is amazing content for this thing we called social media. And let's just throw it out. This is amazing content.
Yeah.
It's a gift that you should be sharing more publicly and maybe more widely. I'm trying to be very cautious with my words to not use social and public and anything that leads toward this difference between extroverts and introverts. So I think in a lot of ways, just calling this LinkedIn and stuff social media has made a lot of naturally more introverted people, which tend to be more on the S and C and DISC, to be a
100%.
little bit more, oh, no, that's not me. And I think we've done a lot of people like you, Tom, a very big disservice, because the stuff that you write and talk about needs to be out there.
Yeah.
No, I think you nailed it. And you, Brandon, say all the time, right? You run into executives, CEOs in big companies that are scared of personal brand and LinkedIn. I agree with you. I don't think they're scared of personal brand and LinkedIn. I think they're scared of what you just went through, is I have to now go be a D or an I, and I'm not a D or an I,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's inherently not natural for me to do.
Yeah.
And there are some CEOs and executives that are D and Is, and it probably is if you look at the people that have been, it's easy for you to, get them on LinkedIn. It probably is like that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to reframing, Brandon. And just like what you did, you were very methodical and very cautious about choosing your words. And the reason why you were trying to not just compliment Tom, but get him to see that natural gifting that he has.
Mm-hmm.
All you were doing right there was reframing his natural giftings into the ability to be able to see. And that's what I try to do, the checklist and the list. And, on Mondays, I'll post to Facebook, and on Tuesdays, I'll post to LinkedIn these thoughts that I had last week when I made this list and curated Richard's thoughts. And God help the person being able to do that. So what you get there is playing into your natural communication style, because people see through inauthenticity, and it's the quickest way to lose trust, and it's the quickest way to lose value that you provide when you start being inauthentic.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying too, I think, and clarify this for me, is a lot of people end up being inauthentic ignorantly, unintentionally, and then can't figure out why it's not resonating with people.
Yeah. And I can think of leaders that try to play in a space where it's, we used to use this term, their wheelhouse, their natural strength zone. And you were talking about branding, Tom. For me, that your brand is where those 3 or 4, maybe 5, but I think for most people it rests in about 3. I think there's magic in 3. Like for me, I'm a mentor, I'm a communicator, and I'm a leader. If I can work in those 3 areas, I will leave this call energized because I was able to work in those 3 areas. Now, do I need to work on my weaknesses? Sure. My organization skills, I wrote down a couple of things you said a while ago, Brandon and Tom. And so I work on those things, but to play in that strength zone. And I've watched leaders try to be something they're not and play in a different arena, and it comes across clunky, and it's hard to build trust when that inauthenticity is there.
Yeah. Brandon, do you think that concept will help people get more comfortable with LinkedIn? I
Yeah, I
think
want to. I mean, I think there's something there. I had a big aha moment listening to Richard say that while thinking about you, and I want to play around with that, and you will probably be able to help me distill that into a framework very quickly. But I think there is something there with especially senior leaders who tend to be more, well, Richard, you tell me where they tend to be. I mean, I don't think there's any like more prevalent personality type for CEOs, but I do think that there is when I talk to CEOs about LinkedIn, the first thing they tend to say is, "Oh, I don't have time for it." And
Sure.
you start digging deeper and it's like, "Well, I'm not really sure what to do." And then you dig a little bit deeper and that's when they kind of look around to make sure no one's listening and they go, "Honestly, it scares the crap out of me to do it wrong."
Right.
Right? And lose my reputation. That's really where most CEOs
Yeah.
look at LinkedIn.
Yeah, that
So,
D and C side, and I talk to presidents of organizations and work with different CEOs from time to time. That dominant personality is what drives them to the top. And you think about the dominant personality, they're driven, they push, they want if it's a DC personality, they want perfection, they push for results oriented. And so taking a step back or having that time to do that, then you start getting into some fears of failure, fears of looking weird or vulnerable or looking a certain way. And I promise you, I'm not going to use this word to brag on my vocabulary, but there is a word called atelophobia. And and the reason why it's at the top of my mind is because when you teach on the whole topic of putting on a mask or a fear of uh, being something that you're not, it's really the fear of imperfection or the fear of never being good enough. And that atelophobia is real even for the people that are in C suites. Um,
mhm.
and cutting through that is so important and helping people understand it's just another venue or another way where people can grow with you and see a different side of you.
Brandon, I think what would be a really interesting episode, and I would love to make sure Carson's here for it, is get Christy as well, Christy Jones,
Mhm.
who talks a lot about superpower, and you're finding your superpower and discovering your superpower and kind of mirroring that with some of the things that we've talked about here. And I think what I'm seeing, of course, is a framework that could be created here, or a system that could be created here that would really help to overcome some of the resistance and hesitancy to quote unquote the personal brand. Because we've talked about it over and over. However, you end up doing that, that personal brand and the reputation and everything that you build with that, that'll not only help you in what you're doing right, it carries through your whole career. It carries through your whole business life. And it's an area that I think is still perceived as, oh, that's for somebody else. It's not for me. And I think there's some really good, Brandon, as you said, the last 8 or 10 episodes, we could end up having maybe a super panel of some people to really go through some of the stuff
Mhm.
that's there.
Yeah. Yeah, my brain's going in lots of different directions on how we we look at, so Jeremy Kubicek's a friend of mine, and he and his partner with Giant Worldwide, he said something years ago for me. It's really simple, and it's always had this profound effect. Is you've got to two things, and I know John Maxwell says something very similar, but you got to know yourself to lead yourself. And then the second step is you got to know what it's like to be on the other side of you. And that's really the one I wanted to get to. What's it like to be on the other side of you? Take that time. And I think that's really what we've talked about today is, as a seller, do you know what it's like to be on the other side of you? And simultaneously, you got to be on the other side of your buyer. And you have to be the one that adapts to their style, because they're not going to adapt to yours. And it doesn't mean being disingenuous. It just means to be flexible to meet their needs and show up in the personality, or let the personality trait lead that needs to lead, even and especially when it's uncomfortable.
One quick story, and I'll close with this. Gentlemen, thanks for allowing me to be a part of this conversation today. But you just remind, I worked for an advertising agency right out of college, and I'll never forget going to a customer to try to sell them, and I couldn't get anywhere with them. And they kept talking about their former salesperson that they had. And I again, being the dumbest person in the room, I just asked the question, and it opened up Pandora's box for me, because I said, what was it about that salesperson that you liked? How did they sell you? This person just opened up, and I was just taking notes. Imagine going to a customer and asking them, how do you like to be sold?
Yeah. I thought that's where you were going.
And well, I don't like to be pushed, and I really want to be safe with my decisions. And they just start telling you, well, for me, it's all about value. I really want to learn about the product or whatever it is you're selling, or the boat. And so that question, what's it like being on the other side of me, really is a great question to ask your customers. Hey, what's it like being on the other side of me? What do you see when I come in?
Brandon, that sounds like a great LinkedIn post right there. I can hear you typing already. He's already
I,
writing the post. See?
I'm writing notes.
So,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah. That was
Richard,
good.
this has been awesome. I think we could definitely have a couple of new chapters on this. I think we just scratched the surface. So,
Yeah.
really, really good.
Can I share this with everybody too? I mean, I think that this episode was deeper and meatier than a lot of them, and I feel like our episodes over the last 8 to 10 have gotten there too. We've gotten deeper, but there's this recurring theme of you got to do the work. I mean, Christy's been talking about with her new book, like, you've got to do the work. Carl was talking about that. I'm just blanking on his name, and I can picture him. But anyways, we started talking about that over the last probably 8 to 10 episodes, and it just keeps coming back to this recurring theme of you got to get in and do the work and understand who you are, understand how you're showing up, and get better at showing up in different ways for different people. I mean, that's really what it seems to be coming down to.
I think you nailed it.
What a great way to close, because it's a journey, and we say that all the time, that that's a journey, and it's not just the journey. It is understanding where you are at in the journey, and the roadsides along the way, and the signposts to take you to where you want to go, because the journey never ends. So taking that time and understanding where you are at in the journey, and what turns you need to make coming up.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Richard. Brandon, any final words before we wrap up?
No, I want to finish up so I can write some more notes.
That's right.
Yeah, Yeah, I think my final word would be, hey, everything I talk about is around like this personal branding. And
Mm,
it's not because, personal brand is so important. It's because our network is our net worth. And I know that that's really trite, but everything that we should be focused on is how do we know more people, and how do we become more known by people, especially in our industry, because it's through those relationships that opportunities happen. And everything we talked about this today relates to every single element of that. I think this was really important. Richard, I knew when we did our pre-call that I liked you, and this was going to be a good conversation. But man, my respect for you, and my desire to keep up and be in relationship with you is even higher now. So yeah, thank you so much
yeah.
for
Well, I've followed you guys and watched a lot of your podcasts and seen some of the work that you put out. Feel like I've known Tom forever, and Brandon, you as well. So thanks for allowing me to bloviate this last few minutes and allowing me to just kind of riff with you. As you can tell, much of this is my passion and it's my life's work. So thank you both.
and thanks for that at the end. I know we keep trying to end, but Tom, did you hear what he said? Tom, I feel like I know you.
I know. I know.
And
I'm
that is
telling you
one
this
of
this social media stuff works.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, the two qualitative goals that we have around using all of this LinkedIn platform stuff
Mm,
is that the people who you want to know or be known by, where you want your influence, that they will say, number one, I see you everywhere. That's our rise above the noise. And then most importantly, I feel like I already know you. Because then when you pick up the phone and call them, or you send them an email, or you run into them at a trade show, or you knock on their door at their office, what are they most likely going to do? Because they see you everywhere and feel like they know you, they're going to go,
I know
oh,
you.
Tom, come on in. Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
exactly.
all we're trying to do. That's all this whole LinkedIn social media thing is about. How do we accelerate that by using this crazy stuff called content?
Awesome.
We might make Carson jealous. This is
Uh,
pushing one of our longest
I know. I
episodes.
know. Well, we better wrap up quickly or
Let's
Uh,
it'll
wrap it up.
be
Yeah.
over the thing. So thanks again, Richard. Thanks everybody
Yeah.
for listening, for the comments. Carson will be back next week. We'll have another amazing guest. I think we have another amazing guest next week, Brandon. I know there's a couple of them that we don't, but I don't know exactly what the weeks are there. So
I haven't looked. I know that we do have some blocked off, for it's just the
yeah.
three of us to come in and talk about what we've been learning.
So
But